Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're exploring Simone Martini, the artistic soul from Siena to all of Europe. Now, we are focusing on an artist who didn't just paint pretty pictures. He completely rewired the visual language of an entire continent. He wasn't just your standard painter. He was a true artistic pioneer who took the glowing, golden soul of his hometown and exported it, fundamentally changing the face of European art forever.
To really wrap our heads around Martini, we have to transport ourselves straight to the golden hills of 14th century Siena. Just imagine this vibrant medieval city. Back then, Siena was an incredibly wealthy financial and trading hub. And with that kind of immense wealth comes a very distinct cultural richness. While other Italian cities were looking elsewhere for inspiration, Siena was fiercely proud of its deep roots in the Byzantine aesthetic. They valued opulent decoration, brilliant gold, and a truly majestic, almost overwhelming visual impact. This was the glittering, highly competitive world that forged Simone Martini.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the Sienese alternative. Then, we'll track his passport stamps from Siena to Avignon. After that, we'll explore International Gothic soul, followed by the Italian Pilgrimage Guide. And finally, we'll wrap up with Beyond Reality.
Part 1. The Sienese Alternative, an entirely different artistic path.
So if you're familiar with 14th century Italian art, there's a dominant narrative we really need to challenge right off the bat. The standard story usually focuses entirely on Florence and the great Giotto. And sure, Giotto was all about revolutionary volume, giving figures heavy, realistic weight and grounding them in physical space. He totally opened the door to Renaissance realism. But wait, Siena, and specifically Simone Martini, offered an entirely different, incredibly valid peak of artistic perfection. Martini wasn't particularly interested in mimicking heavy reality. Instead, he prioritized these musical, flowing lines, opulent jewelry-like decoration, and a profound, raw, emotional sensitivity. He wasn't just painting bodies in a room, he was painting the spiritual and emotional essence of his subjects.
Moving right along to Part 2, from Siena to Avignon. Let's trace this artistic journey.
So how exactly did this unique style spread? Well, Martini's aesthetic didn't just develop in a vacuum. It evolved beautifully as he crossed paths with different cultures all across Europe. He started out in Siena in the late 1200s, training under the great master Duccio, the founder of the Sienese School. But Martini actually quickly surpassed his master. He had this natural, almost intuitive affinity for French Gothic elegance. His sheer talent took him out of Siena, down south to the Angevin court in Naples, back up north to Assisi, and finally across the border to the papal court in Avignon, France. And with absolutely every stop, his work just became more refined and more wonderfully international.
His massive breakthrough happened in 1315 with his masterpiece, the Maestà. What's really interesting about this is the sheer scale and the political importance of the commission. He painted this for the Siena Palazzo Pubblico, which was literally the beating heart of the Republic's political power. The flowing drapery and the incredibly elegant lines of the canopy and the figures, it's just stunning. This single work instantly established him as Siena's leading artist.
Fast forward just 2 years later, and he's at the Angevin court in Naples, painting St. Louis of Toulouse, crowning Robert of Anjou. The Angevins had strong French roots, and Martini absorbed their courtly style perfectly. He used this extreme jewel-like gold punchwork to create those exquisite textured lilies. It is quite literally a masterpiece of political propaganda disguised as religious art, completely merging French elegance with expert Sienese craftsmanship.
Now let's jump to the 1320s and see how this builds in Assisi. On one hand, he's creating broad, sweeping chivalric scenes, like St. Martin sharing his mantle with a beggar, full of rich, aristocratic, courtly details. But then, in the exact same fresco cycle, he gives us these intense psychological close-ups, like his depiction of the resurrection. You can practically feel the human emotion, the furrowed brow, the skepticism. Martini was proving he could effortlessly handle grand narrative and razor-sharp psychological insights simultaneously.
And this brilliantly illustrates what is perhaps his most famous work, the Annunciation, which he completed in 1333 alongside his brother-in-law Lippo Memmi. Housed in the Uffizi today, this is widely considered the absolute peak of Gothic craftsmanship. Just look at Mary's posture. She isn't just sitting there passively accepting the angel Gabriel's message. She is physically shrinking back. She's pulling her deep blue cloak tight around her. There is such profound psychological depth here, surprise, awe, maybe even hesitation.
and it's all captured in a perfectly elegant, sweeping S-curve. It's simply breathtaking. For his final act, Martini moved to Avignon, the seat of the papal court at the time. It was a massive, buzzing international melting pot. While he was there, he actually befriended the great poet Petrarch and began creating deeply introspective, emotionally profound works like the Orsini poetic. He dialed back the dazzling exterior decoration just a bit to allow for a much more intense, condensed emotional expression of Christ's Passion.
Part 3. International Gothic Soul. The Lasting Legacy.
Simone Martini's highly specific style didn't just fade away when he passed in Avignon in 1344, it actually laid the groundwork for a massive European art movement. We call this the International Gothic style. His unique fusion of Italian emotion, Byzantine gold, and French courtly elegance swept like wildfire across France, Spain, Germany, and beyond. It literally became the shared visual language of European nobility. It influenced the legendary illuminated manuscripts of the Northern Limburg brothers. Back in Italy, it was passed down to masters like Gentile da Fabriano. You can even trace Martini's rhythmic, poetic contours directly into the late 15th century, straight to the graceful lines of Botticelli. Now that is a legacy.
All right, part 4. Let's get practical. The Italian pilgrimage guide to see the masterpieces.
So, for the focused learner out there planning a trip, here is your practical itinerary. His most vital, glowing works remain beautifully preserved right where they belong, or in Italy's greatest museums. You'll want to start in Siena at the Palazzo Pubblico for the Maestà, and definitely hit the Pinacoteca Nazionale for the Agostino Novello altarpiece. Then pop up to Florence for the Annunciation at the Uffizi. Stop over in Pisa for the St. Catherine altarpiece, before traveling to Assisi to be completely surrounded by the St. Martin frescoes at the San Francesco Basilica. Head way down south to Naples Capodimonte to check out that extreme gold punchwork on St. Louis. Oh, and don't forget the Ambrosiana Library in Milan to see his delicate Virgil frontispiece, a true testament to his close friendship with Petrarch.
Now, when you're in Siena checking off that itinerary, you are definitely going to see this iconic equestrian portrait, Guidariccio da Fogliano. It's hanging right there in the Palazzo Pubblico. It's a spectacular example of Martini's mastery over secular and military subjects. The stunning diamond patterns on the general's coat perfectly match the horse's covering, all set against this stark, atmospheric battlefield. It just proves he wasn't only a master of religious panels, he was an absolute master of the human theater.
And finally, Part 5, Beyond Reality, the Enduring Golden Lines.
To summarize his ultimate artistic philosophy, art historians have famously called Martini the Raphael of the Middle Ages. And honestly, it hits the nail right on the head. Long before the High Renaissance even kicked off, Martini achieved an absolutely perfect blend of elegance, spiritual depth, and poetic humanity. He refused to simply mimic the physical, heavy weight of the real world. He wanted his art to elevate the viewer.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. Must art simply imitate reality, or should it lead us into a spiritual, elegant, and poetic realm? Simone Martini clearly chose the latter, and his immortal golden lines still shine brilliantly today, guiding us out of the mundane and into the sublime. Keep that question in mind the next time you find yourself standing in front of a canvas. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.